Okay, my name is Tewarie. I'm the Member of Parliament for Caroni Central in the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. I, up to 2 months ago, used to be the Minister for Planning and Sustainable Development. And I served in that ministry for about 4 years. And basically, we developed a sustainable development agenda for the country under that administration. And prior to the establishment of the 17 goals by the United Nations, we had submitted our agenda of 12 goals for Trinidad and Tobago. We also did a document for the Rio Plus 20 project in Brazil on sustainable development for Trinidad and Tobago, identifying the 14 top challenges for Trinidad and Tobago as an island development state and how far we had made progress and what were the gaps still in terms of achievement, both at the in terms of the commitments made internationally and the legislative support that was required to make these things possible. Basically now, as an opposition member in Parliament, I am chair of the committee basically which supervises the governmental accounts in Parliament. So that gives me some interest in this, and of course the energy element of accounting and parliamentary responsibility is important there. The main challenge in the Caribbean is really how to transform from fossil fuel based energy consumption. And this fossil fuel based energy consumption makes the price of energy extremely high. So it makes industries that require energy to support manufacturing or even tourism very, very uncompetitive because of this energy cost factor. And secondly, it makes the price of turning on a light bulb in a home very expensive to the ordinary consumer. So a transformation of the energy matrix is necessary in the Caribbean. Some countries have been very successful. For instance, Dominica, which now produces about 40% of its energy from what you might call sustainable sources. And more than that, Dominica is now involved in a project with a French company, actually, through a government-to-government arrangements, in which if they are successful in what way they are trying to do with hydro-powered electricity, they may even be able to export to Martinique and Guadeloupe. Other countries are trying to transform. In Trinidad and Tobago, we have always been an energy-rich and self-sufficient country. So the challenges for a country such as ours is how to reduce the consumption of energy. Because it's so cheap, people are not very cautious in the way they use energy. Secondly, how to transform the local economy in such a way that the energy consumption is more climate friendly and more sustainable, so that most of our energy would be exported rather than simply used in the electricity grid or the energy grid or in terms of gas consumption and so on. And so these are some of the challenges. First of all, the contrast between Trinidad and Tobago and Dominica. And secondly, the need for transformation from fossil fuels for all of these islands so that they can use more in terms of solar, so that they can use more in terms of wind, so that they can go to a more reasonable approach to natural gas consumption, whether in the form of LNG or CNG. And I think that is what is happening now. When I was Minister of Planning and Sustainable Development, we worked with the Inter-American Development Bank to develop a strategy for transformation of the Caribbean's energy matrix away from fossil fuels to more sustainable forms of energy. And they made a commitment of $600 million towards that project. And the CDB, the Caribbean Development Bank, also committed $120 million. I don't know what the current government of Trinidad and Tobago is going to do in terms of this project and how they're going to support it and whether they're going to support it. But I think something like that would do a number of things. First of all, it could help Trinidad and Tobago to be a supplier of natural gas in various forms with the new technologies that are available for transportation in a very constructive way. Secondly, it can move those islands away from fossil fuel dependence. Thirdly, it can help to finance renewable energy transformation of many of those islands. And finally, of course, when you do all of this together, it will really enhance the sustainable tourism possibilities for these islands, which will now really be moving towards cleaner and cleaner energy and a more sustainable path to development. So I think as small island states and as countries, most of which have some kind of coastal access, I think these countries would do well to move towards a more sustainable part of energy and a more, what can I say, to alternative uses of energy and of course to renewable energy sources. I think it would be very good for the Caribbean to set an example in the world that way. Yeah, that's a very strong question that you asked about how parliamentarians can basically exercise oversight in support of the sustainable development goals. And I think that there are three key things that parliamentarians can do. I think the first thing is to make sure that policy for the country is debated in the parliament so that they are not simply an act of executive decision. And if there is a full debate of policy in the direction of sustainability in the parliament, I think we are more likely to get policy that is truly national in scope rather than partisan in interest. The second thing is that we must ensure that the parliaments are not dominated by the executive and that the parliamentary process is allowed to play its genuine role, which is to hold the executive accountable. And if we have strong parliamentary committees that are responsible for oversight, and they have the command over the scrutiny of matters related to policy execution, I think that can be very valuable in terms of ensuring that the country addresses the sustainability challenges, and that policy is advanced to achieve the goals of sustainable development. And thirdly, through the parliamentary oversight process, the citizens can also be brought into the picture so that NGOs and people's organizations can have their input and influence the process of scrutiny over governmental action. And I think if these things were done, the parliament could be very strong in exercising influence to ensure that countries adhere to sustainable development goals and objectives. Yes, I think the workshop was very well thought through. It started with the issues of climate change and the general issues of sustainable development. And then it focused on energy and energy-related issues. And it addressed the issues of sustainability from the point of view as well of the 17 Millennium Development Goals. I think tying it in like that with a group of parliamentarians from across the board, from the UK, from the Caribbean, I think what is possible is that it has really created the conditions for a thoughtful examination of some of the pressing issues of sustainability and sustainable development. And more than that, it has raised the question of how can parliamentarians and parliaments play a role in aligning maybe national and regional policy and action to the sustainable development agenda globally. And I think that that is very, very useful and really quite admirable in its attempt to try to bring information to people and also to take into account people's perspectives based on their national experience and based on their collective sharing. I think that's very valuable. Welcome.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.